Really dramatic developments unfolding in Russia as we speak. Is this an attempted coup? Some are calling it an insurrection, yet others are calling it an armed rebellion. Putin has issued a threat saying there will be dire consequences. People behind this will not go unpunished. He's called it high treason, betrayal, and putting a knife in the back of the Russian people is what this is, says Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's also said the very future of Russia is at stake. Let me go across to our guests now. Nandan Unikrishnan, if I could start with you, just what is going on in Russia? These developments are baffling, they're astounding, and they're worrying. The Wagner mercenary group, its chief, Yevgeny Prigozhin, claims that his troops have taken control of the Russian city of Rostov and that they're now marching towards Moscow. He has issued a threat saying, unless the top military leadership of Russia holds talks with him, it's only a matter of time before his forces capture the Russian capital. Would you call it an attempted coup? Just what's going on here and what has brought this on in your assessment?
Thank you, Neha. Thank you for inviting me. Firstly, I think we need to get some facts in place. The Wagner Group on the ground at this point of time in Rostov is probably 25,000 people. The Russian army is close to 1 million. So I think the numbers speak for themselves. So there is no question of Wagner marching to Moscow, which is several hundred kilometers away from Rostov. Rostov's importance is the fact that it is the Southern Command headquarters, and it is the headquarters from which essentially the war in Ukraine is being managed. So in that sense, yes, it's an important city. And yes, Prigozhin has control of the headquarters. But please note, if you've been watching his own statements, he has clearly said that he is not interfering with any of the military operations, that the operations in Ukraine as commanded out of this headquarters are carrying on, and not a single officer has been prevented from performing his duties. This situation is the result of a long-standing difference of opinion that Mr. Prigozhin has had with the Russian defense minister and the chief of general staff, Mr. Gerasimov, as well as the defense minister, Shoigu. In fact, one of his demands is that the Russian state hand over these two individuals to him. So, to cap it all, I would say in a nutshell, yes, you could describe this as a mutiny. I think Prigozhin has seriously underestimated the strength of the Russian state. The Russian state will hit back. At this point of time, they're trying to do so without much, what we tend to call collateral damage. But if this continues for much longer, they will just wipe him out.
Major General Sivaj, do you agree with Nandan Unikrishnan's assessment? He says that this is at best a distraction for Putin and will dent his global image. But the Wagner Group and its chief, Yevgeny Prigozhin, are in no position to mount any serious and credible challenge to Putin. At this stage, if this goes on much longer, Putin and his military will crush Prigozhin. For the benefit of our viewers, if you could explain, sir, why do you believe Prigozhin is doing what he is? Mr. Unikrishnan talked about how there have been serious differences between Putin and Prigozhin for a long time now on how the Ukraine war is being fought. If you could just explain that to our viewers.
Yeah, Neha, 2-3 issue. You see, the point is, as far as the Wagner Group is concerned, it's a private army. It has got many criminals also who have been converted into army by basically Wagner Group. They have fought in Syria. They have also fought in Crimea. And as far as Russia is concerned, in this Russia-Ukraine war, the Battle of Bakhmut has been fought purely by Wagner Group, and they managed to succeed after about 9 to 10 months. Now, as far as present situation is concerned, they have taken over the Rostov, which is a southern western portion of Ukraine and the southern headquarters. Now, as far as the strength is concerned, it is about 25,000 to 30,000. So, why it has happened? There was a difference of opinion which was brewing up between Wagner Group chief as well as the defense minister, especially in the functioning of it, because they wanted a freedom of action, Wagner Group, and they feel that they should get more ammunition and they should have more say, which possibly was denied by the defense minister. No, but how the situation has come to this pass, the question comes is it the doing of Wagner Group, the difference of opinion? No, to me it looks like that this is a handiwork of the intelligence agency of the Western countries. They were involved in that. They wanted this sort of rift to come between Wagner Group as well as the Russian army, and they to some extent has succeeded in it. Now, the second question comes in, is they capable of denting the image of Russia? You see, Russia-Ukraine war is on. The counter-offensive of Ukraine is going on, though slow, but it is progressing. If the sort of attention of Russian army is diverted in handling Wagner Group, obviously it will have some impact on the morale as well as the fighting capability of the Russian army. Now, as far as Wagner Group is concerned, if they think that they can go from Rostov and toward the Moscow, which is about 700 kilometers, they will make a biggest mistake. But if they hold on to Rostov and they fight, they can create a lot of nuisance value to Russian army, because after all, they are the one which have won number of battles for Russian army. They are good fighters, and defensive battle can be easily fought for a longer duration than a person who is attacking. To me, it looks like that this will be a bloody battle in case it is fought on urban concept. But my point is the Russian army is now thinking to create a rift between Wagner Group, and so that from within the Wagner Group, however, they can dislodge their leader. Because if they fight to the United Wagner Group, then it will be a bloody war. It won't end in another 5-7 days. It will take a lot of time till the ammunition is there with Wagner Group. So I suppose from all sides the things are working. As far as Putin is concerned, he wants the Wagner Group chief should be targeted and he should be killed at the earliest. At the same time, if the things are not happening, is some sort of under the table, some sort of treaty, some sort of thing to buy time and thereafter finish him later. That can be also a strategy. As far as the Western countries are concerned, they seem to be int agencies which are involved, which are the one which were working on this to create a rift between Wagner Group and Russian army, so that the Russian army become weak. After all, if the Russian army was so strong, so where was the requirement to have a private army? Everyone knows Wagner Group is a bunch of criminals, and they do not follow any rules of regulation of a professional army. So all said and done, this has dented the image of Russian army and Putin. But to me, it looks like that in the end, Putin will able to overcome. Wagner Group will be a cause of a deterrence, but not create too much of a problem for Putin.
Okay.
In another 4 days, I think he will be able to overcome. Putin's aim is to create a rift between the Wagner Group so that the majority of the generals of Wagner Group are not with their chief and they raise their hand. So
and will Putin succeed in that mission? He very well might, given that this is really a battle of unequals, as has been pointed out by Nandan Onikrishnan. Ambassador Vohra, thank you for waiting patiently. How do you view these dramatic developments that are taking place in Russia? You have this mercenary group that is issuing threats to the Russian president, almost suggesting that a coup of sorts is underway. The Russian president goes on national television, addresses the Russian people, says the future of Russia is at stake. What is going on here?
Thank you very much, ma'am. Always a pleasure to learn from you. It's absolutely amazing. Your knowledge and that of Professor Onikrishnan, I agree with him 110%. He seems to know this country I thought I knew it well, having lived there, but he is right on what he's talked about. The general has given you the military perspective. Let me put a couple of things across very clearly. This character called Yevgeny Prigozhin, he's a hard-drinking, right-wing, ultra-nationalist Russian. I've met him, by the way, in Moscow. He hasn't attacked President Putin. What he says is that get rid of that Sergei Shoigu, he's an absolute scoundrel, he's not telling you the truth, etc., etc. Russians are very, very sensitive to threats to their existence. Ma'am, I would urge you, I'm sure you've done it. Do you remember a classic by Mikhail Sokolov called And Quiet Flows the Dawn? Epic picture of Russian life during a time of crisis. Russia quit the First World War, but they didn't get support. Exactly what some of their soldiers or these the Wagner Group fellows are saying about Ukraine. You're not giving us supplies, you're not giving us food, you're not giving us logistics, etc. All that was happening, and Russians were being slaughtered by Germany. They quit, then came the Russian Revolution, then came the emergence of the Soviet Union collapsed. That was yet another challenge. Now, man, what has Putin said? I just wanted to give you this background about the Germans giving weapons to Ukraine. He told the Russian people for the second time in less than a century, Germany is attacking Mother Russia. This is very, very significant. So they rally around him. As far as this character is concerned, he's disappointed. I can sense frustration. He was known also as Putin's chef because he owns a series of restaurants, including, by the way, an Indian restaurant, not in Moscow, but slightly outside Moscow. And apparently the Russian president enjoys Indian food from time to time. So what he's trying to do, I believe, or what he's expressing is a sense of frustration. He's been fighting all across Africa. And most of it is on a self-financing basis. In Syria, he said, give me this oil field. And since I serve in Africa, I know he went around saying, give me these gold mines, give me this, give me that, give me everything else, and I'll fight for you. And many of the governments, because they have weak militaries, happily welcomed him. So here he is disappointed. He's lost probably half his fighters. And by the way, might interest you to know that some of our retired soldiers from Asia, I'm not saying India, also serve with the Wagner Group. I'm aware of this. What does he want? He wants to make a much more serious effort than what he thinks is being done now for Ukraine. And taking Rostov-on-Don, which has the military headquarters, you know, ma'am, this effectively means that he's in charge now of the Ukraine operations. But of course, we are told that his fellows are marching on Moscow, which is very stupid. They're going to be eliminated without any difficulty. So Putin reaching out to the Russian people is telling them, we have an external threat to our unity, which is the neo-Nazis sitting in Kiev, and now we have an internal threat. And so he's talking of a counter-terrorism operation, just as Ukraine was a special military operation. Take it from me, ma'am. I know the Russian people well. They will rally to Putin's cause. Mr. Prigozhin's mutiny, not a coup, his limited insurrection, is doomed even before it starts.
Well, Ambassador Vohra, I'm quite interested in the way that you have, in fact, spoken about this coup as such. But for me, the biggest question was, and I was asking even Manikrishnan, was that why is it that you get a high-spirited rhetoric against this? Because if it was something that has to be, I mean, if this person does not command the kind of power that he commands, then why so much of attention being given to him?
Because President Vladimir Putin is under pressure. You know this better than I do. What was supposed to end in a week or 10 days or 2 weeks has been going on for a year and a half now. Obviously, he's under pressure. Look at his body language. Look at the comments that he's been making. There was one time when that character, the fellow who used to work in a circus in Ukraine, said, okay, I'm going to talk to the Russian. Then he issues a decree saying there'll be no talks while Putin is in charge. Putin considers it, described it as an existential threat, not just for Mother Russia, but also for himself. They've also gone and indicted him, the International War Crimes Tribunal. So he knows that if he goes out of power, he goes off to The Hague, and then what happens to him? You know it better than I do what happened to those Africans and to the Serbian fellow who were taken there. Therefore, he's putting his across as a severe threat to the unity of the Russian Federation, Mother Russia, and he's asking the Russian people to support him. And plus, they have appealed to those who are fighting for the Wagner Group that don't do these funny things. Please abandon these chaps and go talk to the nearest Russian military units. We will do whatever we have to. You're not going to be punished as severely as you would otherwise. So I do think, sir, that this is, at the moment, based on my conversations, I speak the language with several of my friends there. This appears to be a totally unnecessary storm in a teacup, and Mr. Putin is reacting or responding in a way that shows that he is in charge. He's the macho guy, he's the tough guy, and he's going to punish these fellows who are trouble.
Okay, interesting. Storm in a teacup, says Ambassador Deepak Vohra.